Okay, welcome back. It is 8/6 of 2015. We're going to take a look at the third syllogism, or the third triad, for Aristotle, according to Brentano. And we ended with the prime mover in the previous syllogism. So we begin with God and himself as the prime mover in this third triad. And then we're going to move through Sophia and then Episteme. But we're going to begin with the first moment of Aletheia truth. And we learn from Brentano that Aristotle considered God and himself to be the prime mover as the pure actuality of thought, the Aletheia primary truth, and that knowledge of the world is an inherently present as a trajectory that already exists within the divine intelligence, and that will and choice of intended effect is also inherently present within the divine intellect. So the prime mover within himself is the Aletheia primary truth, but already within the divine intellect there is this inherent tendency or trajectory to go out of itself and through reality and then return in a self-knowing cycle. Now the second moment is going to be Sophia as the prime mover going out of itself through the process of synonymy, which we've already discussed, and becoming the actual sui generis universality or backdrop and enclosure of finitude that includes the active teleology of the sui generis universality. And then finally, the moment of the finite nous kai episteme, or the understanding through episteme enlightenment of the prime mover returning to itself through the knowing of itself through others, through other finite human beings. It's the taking up of the immediate truth through moments of bliss, and those are moments of the episteme illumination. It's described as the divine intellect knowing itself through other things. The first immediate truth takes up the knowledge of mediate truth into itself as a resemblance. And so, of course, this means that the divine intellect must require a subject with self-consciousness and self-conscious recognition for a true return into the God himself as the prime mover. So the self-conscious moment of recognition is a requirement. Now from this first moment of Aletheia, of discussing the triad moments of the prime mover, we're going to move into the actual second moment of sensate reality, where the pure actuality becomes incarnate principle, or pure actuality becomes incarnate principle. And basically here we take a look at the basic aspects of the divine intellect and the self-knowing process. And Brentano says that Aristotle says that the divine intellect encloses truth through knowledge, good through love, and finitude through blissfulness, enlightenment. And the basic aspects of the active principle of the divine intellect include two modalities: the modality of the measure of love and the modality of the measure of knowing. So the divine intellect measure is the cause of all movement of purpose. Remember, for Aristotle, the divine intellect is described as the unmoved mover. Well, how does an unmoved mover move through directional sense? Well, according to Brentano, he says that that's the concept of a measure. The divine intellect measure is the cause, the causality for all movement of directional purpose and directional sense. So then we take a look at teleosis, or causality, and that sense of purpose. The divine intellect provides the directional sense for all reality. As unmoved mover, the divine intellect exists as object of desire. Directional sense exists as final causality. In the infinite mind, it is an anticipation. Therefore, the subject agent, the potentially self-conscious subject agent, constitutes directional sense through the goal of striving toward this anticipated end. But final causality is perceived as present in actuality as that teleology or that sui generis universality, but it's to be actualized through our participation and our posited teleosis. Our posited teleosis participates in the sui generis universality and the teleology that already exists in our external historical reality. And then that takes us to the third moment of the return, the episteme, or going from the incarnate principle to the return to deity. It's the moment of the divine intellect knowing itself through all things, and Aristotle calls this noeseos noesis, or knowledge of knowledge. But noesis equals Sophia wisdom for Aristotle. Therefore, return equals Sophia noesis, or return is knowledge of wisdom. When Sophia wisdom becomes actualized in our external reality, that constitutes the return to the divine prime mover. When Sophia wisdom is actualized in external historical reality, return becomes actualized, return to the divine intellect. But Sophia equals intellect and joy, so it is also a bliss, and it cannot be grasped conceptually. We can approximate through concept, but we can't fully grasp a divine intellect through concept. Now, as realized object in external reality, the divine intellect exists as striving for being. That is, how does the sui generis universality exist? It exists as striving for being. It exists as a spontaneous striving toward correspondence, and the Greek term is agonizomai, or to strive and struggle for the correspondence to the divine intellect. Agonizomai is a striving and a struggling for that correspondence of finitude to the divine intellect. But it all really is enclosed within that first moment where Brentano and Aristotle give us the triad within the triad. And I always love getting a triad within the triad from Brentano, and he's very good about that. He's even giving us a very logical progression of his discussion of Aristotle here, because we really are moving from syllogism to syllogism to syllogism. This is our third syllogism. He is taking a logical approach in Florence, Italy, along with his wife Emily, who is transcribing the notes. And he's being very methodical in the way he's giving these essays, and we're thankful to Emily for transcribing the essays for us. But it's very precisely and logically being done in this volume. We're moving through syllogisms, and the third moment of each syllogism opens the first moment of the next syllogism. So we ended with prime mover last time. We're opening with prime mover this time. But it gives us the triad within the triad, which I really love, because now we understand that the prime mover is the pure actuality of thought, but the pure actuality of thought goes out of itself as the working, active tendency of lifting finitude through Sophia wisdom. So prime mover as pure actuality of thought goes out of itself as the teleology of a lifting of finitude through Sophia wisdom, and it becomes evident as a sui generis universality backdrop and enclosure for all of finitude. And then he tells us that the third actual moment of lifting and return is a nous kai episteme, or our understanding, the subject agent reaching a true enlightened episteme understanding of Sophia wisdom, and that constitutes a true return of the prime mover completing its own knowing of itself, the knowing of itself cycle of going out of itself through the sui generis universality, and then lifting finitude through Sophia wisdom, and then when Sophia wisdom becomes actualized, that equals return of actually the subject agent reaching a true enlightened understanding, of truly reaching a true actualization of Sophia wisdom in external reality, and making that evident as a striving for universality. It's the actual existence is this striving toward being that actually becomes the true existence of the sui generis within our historical reality. It is the true active principle of the actuality of thought, of the prime mover, actually spontaneously empowering the substance of reality to strive for being and to lift up, to create an uplifting of finitude, and it all becomes a spontaneous striving toward correspondence to the divine intellect. An agonizomai striving, that is present in our reality. We see it as a teleology. We participate in it as a formation of a psychognostic teleosis. According to Brentano, we form a psychognostic teleosis, and we posit our teleosis as our participation in the sui generis universality that is trying to lift all of reality through the actualization of Sophia wisdom. Actualize Sophia wisdom, which is intellect and joy, and then become involved in that uplifting return to divine intellect and correspondence through that striving for being and through that actualization of Sophia wisdom. So a great third triad from Brentano and Aristotle, and he's being very logical. He's giving us syllogism, and they're all building on each other. So I love the way that Brentano is approaching this volume. It's the final book of his career. This is the final book of his career, and it's a very logically put together, very precise, and of course he's got his wife Emily transcribing the notes. So that'll wrap up the third syllogism, or the third triad. That puts us up through page 78.